What if I told you that one of the biggest traditions in the tech world is slowly disappearing, and most people haven't even noticed? For years, millions of users have relied on dual booting to enjoy the best of both Windows and Linux. One operating system handled gaming, office work, and everyday applications, while the other offered unmatched flexibility, privacy, and powerful development tools. Switching between them always meant restarting your computer, but for many people, that was simply part of the routine. Today, however, that routine is quietly becoming history. For a long time, dual booting represented the perfect compromise. Windows remained the preferred choice for mainstream users because of its software compatibility and familiar interface, while Linux attracted developers, programmers, and technology enthusiasts who wanted complete control over their systems. Having both installed on one computer allowed users to enjoy the strengths of each platform, even if it meant dealing with partitions, bootloaders, and the occasional update that broke everything. Back then, Windows and Linux felt like two completely different worlds. Every task was handled differently, from installing software to managing files and updating the operating system. Windows focused on simplicity and commercial applications, while Linux emphasized customization, open-source software, and command-line tools. Choosing between them wasn't just about software, it was about choosing an entirely different way of using your computer. But over the past several years, something remarkable has happened. Instead of competing with each other, Windows and Linux have slowly started working together. There was no dramatic announcement or major event that changed everything overnight. Instead, hundreds of small improvements gradually removed the barriers between the two operating systems until many users barely noticed the transformation taking place. The biggest turning point came when Microsoft introduced the Windows subsystem for Linux, better known as WSL. For the first time, Windows users could run genuine Linux distributions directly inside Windows without creating another partition or restarting their computers. Suddenly, developers who previously depended on dual booting could access Linux terminals, package managers, scripting tools, and development environments while staying inside Windows the entire time. The first version of WSL was impressive, but it wasn't perfect. Some Linux applications worked flawlessly, while others struggled because Windows was translating Linux system calls rather than running a real Linux kernel. Even with those limitations, it became obvious that Microsoft was changing its attitude toward Linux. Instead of treating it like a competitor, the company was beginning to embrace it. Then WSL2 arrived and completely changed the game. Microsoft included a real Linux kernel running inside a lightweight virtual environment, dramatically improving speed, compatibility, and reliability. Developers could now run Docker containers, Kubernetes clusters, Python environments, web servers, databases, and thousands of Linux applications almost exactly as they would on a native Linux installation. For many people, there was simply no reason to reboot anymore. This single feature quietly removed one of the biggest reasons developers maintained dual boot systems. They could write code using Linux tools while simultaneously using Microsoft Office, Adobe applications, Visual Studio, or other Windows software. Instead of choosing between two operating systems every morning, they suddenly had access to both at the same time. At exactly the same time, Linux itself was becoming far better at supporting Windows software. Compatibility projects like Wine continued improving year after year, while Valve's Proton made it possible to play thousands of Windows games directly on Linux. Launch of the Steam Deck proved something many people never expected. It showed that Linux could become a serious gaming platform capable of running modern AA titles. Gaming has always been one of Windows' strongest advantages, but that advantage is shrinking. Graphics drivers continue improving. Vulkan has become a powerful cross-platform graphics technology, and Proton allows an enormous library of Windows games to run on Linux with little or no extra configuration. While Windows still has an edge in certain situations, Linux gaming has improved beyond what most people imagined possible just a few years ago. Virtualization has also become incredibly powerful. Modern Intel and AMD processors include hardware acceleration that allows entire operating systems to run inside virtual machines with impressive performance. Launching Linux inside Windows or Windows inside Linux has become fast, smooth, and practical for everyday work. What once required two separate operating systems can now happen simultaneously on the same desktop. Cloud computing has pushed this evolution even further. Today, many developers spend more time connected to remote Linux servers than working directly on their own computers. Whether they're building websites, deploying containers, training AI models, or managing cloud infrastructure, most of the heavy work happens online. Their local operating system simply becomes the gateway to everything else. Cross-platform software has also changed the rules. Applications like Google Chrome, Firefox, Visual Studio Code, Discord, Slack, Zoom, and countless others behave almost identically regardless of whether you're using Windows or Linux. Programming languages such as Python, JavaScript, Rust, Go, and Java work seamlessly across both operating systems, making software development more flexible than ever before. Another major reason dual booting is fading away is container technology. Tools like Docker package applications together with everything they need to run, eliminating the classic "it works on my machine" problem. Developers no longer worry as much about which operating system they're using because containers provide the same environment almost everywhere. Kubernetes extends this idea even further by managing applications across thousands of servers regardless of the platform underneath. Artificial intelligence is accelerating this trend at an incredible pace. Most AI frameworks perform best on Linux servers, but many developers still prefer Windows for their everyday desktop environment. WSL2 bridges that gap perfectly by allowing users to install Linux-based AI libraries, machine learning frameworks, CUDA toolkits, and Python environments directly inside Windows without maintaining a separate Linux installation. Perhaps the most surprising part of this story is Microsoft's transformation. Years ago, many people viewed Microsoft and Linux as rivals that would never cooperate. Today, Microsoft contributes to open-source projects, develops software for Linux users, supports Linux heavily on Azure, and actively works with the open-source community. Linux has become an important part of Microsoft's business rather than something to compete against. Linux has evolved dramatically as well. Modern desktop environments are cleaner, faster, and easier to use than ever before. Hardware support has improved significantly, allowing Wi-Fi adapters, graphics cards, Bluetooth devices, printers, webcams, and touchpads to work with minimal effort. Installing Linux today is far simpler than it was even 5 years ago, making it much more approachable for new users. File sharing between both operating systems has also become almost effortless. WSL allows Windows applications to access Linux files directly, while cloud storage services automatically synchronize data across platforms. Instead of feeling like two isolated ecosystems, Windows and Linux now communicate with each other naturally, making daily workflows far more convenient. The biggest change, however, may not be technical at all. It's the way people think about operating systems. In the past, users often identified themselves as either Windows users or Linux users, defending one platform while criticizing the other. Today, many professionals happily use both without thinking twice. They simply choose whichever tool works best for the job at that moment. Businesses have adopted exactly the same mindset. Many companies provide Windows desktops while allowing developers to access Linux environments through WSL, virtual machines, or cloud servers. Others run Linux workstations while remotely accessing Windows applications whenever necessary. Instead of forcing employees to choose one operating system, organizations are combining the strengths of both. Universities are doing the same thing. Students learning programming often use Windows laptops while accessing Linux development environments through WSL or browser-based cloud platforms. This approach gives students valuable Linux experience without requiring complicated installations or dual boot configurations, making technical education much more accessible. Web applications have also reduced the importance of operating systems. Email, office suites, project management tools, communication platforms, streaming services, and collaborative software increasingly run inside web browsers. As long as users have a modern browser and an internet connection, much of their daily work remains exactly the same regardless of whether they're using Windows or Linux. Even cybersecurity professionals now combine both operating systems instead of choosing one. Security researchers frequently analyze systems using Linux tools while managing Windows environments at the same time. Remote access, virtualization, and cloud infrastructure allow them to move effortlessly between platforms depending on the task they're performing. Of course, dual booting hasn't disappeared completely. Some professional software still works best on Windows, while certain low-level development tasks benefit from running Linux natively. Competitive gamers may also rely on Windows because of anti-cheat compatibility. These specialized situations mean dual booting will continue to exist for some users. But for the average developer, student, creator, or technology enthusiast, the need for dual booting is fading rapidly. Virtualization, WSL2, cloud computing, Docker, browser-based applications, and better compatibility have removed many of the reasons people once needed two completely separate operating systems. What was once considered essential has quietly become optional. What's truly fascinating is how little attention this transformation has received. There was no headline declaring that Windows and Linux had become partners. Instead, countless small improvements slowly reshaped the computing world until many users realized they hadn't rebooted into another operating system for months or even years. Looking ahead, this trend will likely continue. Artificial intelligence, cloud-native development, better virtualization, and increasingly portable software will make operating system boundaries even less important. Users will care less about what's running underneath and more about whether their applications, files, and workflows are available whenever and wherever they need them. So is this really the end of dual booting? Not entirely. Dedicated enthusiasts and specialized professionals will always have reasons to run separate operating systems. But for millions of everyday users, developers, students, and creators, dual booting is no longer the necessity it once was. Windows and Linux aren't becoming the same operating system, they're becoming better partners. And that quiet partnership may be one of the biggest changes in modern computing, proving that the future isn't about choosing sides. It's about using the best of both worlds without ever having to leave your desktop.